Hello.
Our story begins inside the Jedi Temple. Mace, Kit, Agan, and Sadie had already set themselves down a path that could not be undone. A singular action that, if failed, could undo 1,000 generations of Jedi and Senate relations. Anakin rushed from the High Council chambers after wiping tears from his eyes. His legs carried him through the corridors and past brothers and sisters. They were, all in fact, his brothers and sisters after all. A class of younglings preparing to enter a training room all watched him pass by them with stars in their eyes. They idolized the Chosen One. He looked a little panicked, but his resolve was calm and controlled. They knew, as he rushed around them, that whatever mission he was on was for the betterment of the galaxy. Whatever followed in the next 30 minutes would determine the rest of their lives. Anakin slipped as he turned around the corners and slowed his pace, nodding to a couple of priests and priestesses inside the corridors, before continuing towards the hangar bay. The closer he got, the harder it felt for him to move. Something instinctually told him that everything he was doing was wrong, but he needed to be there. He couldn't just let the Jedi kill the only person that could save his wife from certain death. But even Anakin couldn't neglect the truth, that is, what any of that meant. It was a morass situation for everyone involved. As Anakin turned around another corner, he stopped. Everything in his world started to spin. His head felt untied to his neck. Anakin heaved heavily as if the running he did had just exhausted him beyond physicality. He searched the corridor and found it to be lifeless. Not a soul was walking in this part of the temple, and perhaps that was the greatest indicator that he shouldn't go. There was a dreadful sense of onus, but also everything was too unintelligible. He placed his hand against a pillar. 1,000 generations of peace, a thought that too crept into his head. Why did it feel like everything he was doing was wrong? It shouldn't feel that way. He was potentially saving a singular life or multiple lives. What he didn't know was how many lives beyond, and within his own control, would be affected by his decision to enter that door leading to the hangar bay. He puffed his chest and held his breath and continued to storm forward. This did not aid him in the slightest, because a voice, similar to the one he had heard inside the council chambers, started to infect his thoughts. By this point, Sidious could no longer focus on Skywalker. There were other challenges for him to face. The voice was another mentor, one long gone but never forgotten. Skywalker could hear his calm voice. There was presence, even though the corridor remained hollow.
Anakin, remember your teachings. Remember who you are. Don't be swayed. Don't be taken. Your focus determines your reality. Focus.
As Anakin got closer to the door, he stopped. He turned from side to side. His mind was a muddle of dysfunction. He looked in the direction of the voice, and he whispered under his breath to a no one that was infiltrating his mind.
I have focused. This is where I need to be.
Anakin pressed the button on the door and slid through the opening, before picking up speed and leaping into his ship, pulling out of the hangar bay. Within seconds, the straps were on, and he was speeding out into the city of Coruscant. The fate of the galaxy was in the palm of his hands. Though that didn't occur to him. He just continued ripping past traffic lanes and skyscrapers, before eyeing the executive building. Its lambent aura attracted him like a moth to a light. He couldn't stop himself, even if he wanted to. The ship pulled up and planted itself on the landing platforms of the Republic structure, so grandeur in scale. But even Anakin didn't know the tragedy unfolding inside the heart of this building. Before Anakin could get out of his seat again, it felt like he couldn't move. A lugubrious expression carved itself out of his face, and he unstrapped his seatbelts, before forcing the uncertainty and dismal look from himself. He jumped from the vessel and started hastily walking towards the executive office. When he entered it, moments after landing, he saw a sight that left him quite surprised. He could see Mace Windu having claimed victory over Chancellor Palpatine. From Anakin's perspective, Palpatine never tried to fight Mace, which incriminated the Jedi more than anything. Windu could sense Skywalker's arrival and eyed the opening of the door from which Anakin walked. He didn't say anything, he just waved his hand gently towards the Jedi Knight. The trust that had always been so absent between the two of them was real now. Windu had just been assertively told by Skywalker who the Sith Lord was, and it was the truth. Mace understood, perhaps more than anyone in the Order, the potential political ramifications of this act. It would look like the Jedi were trying to seize the Republic for themselves, not stop a demagogue from taking complete and total control over the galaxy. Though that same uncertainty that forced Mace to place Anakin inside the High Council remained present here. It was a difficult position for Windu to be in. The most powerful Sith in the galaxy had just been defeated by his hand, months after he defeated Talzin, and beside him was the most gifted individual to ever grace the face of the galaxy. And yet, he wasn't certain why Anakin was here. Had Skywalker's thoughts on this situation been cemented, then he would have been invited to follow Windu and the rest to the executive building. However, because he wasn't and still didn't have a firm grip on his own feelings on the matter, it made this situation more strenuous, even with the fact that he trusted Anakin in this moment. Skywalker was mere minutes away from becoming a Jedi Master, and his involvement here could change all of that. As Mace kept his lightsaber facing Palpatine, a few lines were shared back and forth. Sidious always taking an opportunity to turn Anakin away from the light, to pull him into the depths of darkness. Mace rebuted, and Skywalker just watched, shifting his gaze to and from Windu and Palpatine. Before a true outcome could be finalized, Mace admitted fully that he would end the Sith here and now. As Anakin moved to open his mouth, a pouring comfort rolled over his body. It was like a shock, but for him, it felt as if everything slowed down. A scintillating apparition grazed his eyes, positioned just behind Mace Windu. Anakin saw Master Qui Gon Jinn, but the reality is, because of Jinn's purpose, he did not reveal himself. Skywalker manifested what he felt, due to only feeling such overwhelming comfort in the presence of two people, his mother and the realest father figure he ever had. Qui-Gon's voice was soft and melancholic.
Is this the fate of the Chosen One? Is this how you've chosen your path?
Anakin blinked, and in slow motion, electricity flung from Palpatine's hands, and Mace thrusted his saber between his body and the impossibly bright beam.
Do you crave that power? What could it possibly gain you that you don't already have?
He tried to say something in response, but he couldn't even move his lips to say something. Anakin was frozen, and Palpatine yelled at Anakin. It was muffled in the blinding rage and concentrated defense.
You are the only one in control. Your focus determines your reality. What determines the reality of those who stand before you? What do they have to gain from your choice here?
As the Force wills it, Qui-Gon cannot intervene, and so he doesn't. He speaks with questions, because Anakin must come to those answers alone. He must find the right path, and he mustn't spare himself from judgment. He started this debacle. The Jedi were here because he told them the truth. They were warned. So, as Qui-Gon stated, what do they have to gain from his choice? The electricity returned to normal speed, and Mace ripped his saber back, looking to Anakin and gauging his reaction. Sidious whimpered like the coward he was. He'd been beaten. 1,000 years of Sith power, growth, and strategy came to the conclusion with a man who couldn't even kill his master in a straight fight. So much arrogance shared at that opera house, like he did something special by defeating Plagueis the Wise in his sleep, drunk. Mace didn't even need to know the story to understand what kind of man he was dealing with here. This wasn't a contest of Jedi and Sith. Palpatine was a coward. Anakin, for the first time after all the manipulation, the stories, shifting ideals, and lies, could finally see him for who he really was. He turned to Mace's back shoulder to see if Qui-Gon was still there, but he never really was. The apparition was just a figment of his imagination, but the presence was not. He could still sense the warmth of the first Jedi instructor he ever had, and now, between another Jedi Master who could give him the knowledge he needed, or the coward that needed him to save him, was the choice. Could the man who failed to stand against Mace Windu really offer a chance at immortality, a pathway to save people he cared about from dying? Certainly not. Anakin's hand sat on his lightsaber, and he prepared to plead for Palpatine's life. But instead, he ignited his lightsaber. The ringing of the saber caught both Mace and Palpatine's attention. Sidious was optimistic, and he shared those feelings aloud.
Yes, my boy. Stop this madness. What you desire can be yours.
Destroy this perfidious heretic so that we may bring order to the galaxy.
No! No more!
A gut reaction hit Sidious, because Anakin swung down for him, and he raised his hand to stop the saber from colliding with his body. Mace saw his trust come to fruition as he too swung for Palpatine. The Sith Lord tried to fling Anakin away from him, but the move and power it took left him vulnerable to Windu's attack. As Mace's blade made contact, Sidious turned his hands and fired electricity into Windu's face, but the Jedi Master, using all of his concentration and focus, pulled upwards as Anakin jabbed the Sith Lord through the shoulder. Mace and Anakin collided blades by accident, but it was the two swift moves that destroyed the Sith Lord for good. There was evident surprise on both of their faces. Mace and Anakin pulled their sabers back and laughed at each other for a brief moment. All of that tension, frustration, conflict, and finally just releasing it all in this short exchange was what they needed. It was a nice couple of seconds for the two of them, before Windu straightened his posture and his face and walked up to Skywalker and placed a hand on his shoulder.
Thank you, Anakin. You've done more than anyone else could have asked. Return to the temple. Shakti will assist you with the rest. I'll handle this.
Are you sure you don't want my help here? Isn't this a great burden to place on yourself?
It's a much better reality than the Sith controlling the Republic. Go quickly. And don't worry about this. We've just won the Clone Wars.
Anakin smiled and backed away, deigniting his lightsaber and rushing back. In a couple of minutes, Mace would have some unexpected visitors. Luckily, he had enough time to learn that Palpatine had scrambled the security footage long before he and the Jedi entered, so all he needed to do was explain that there had been an assassination. Commander Fox and the Coruscant Guard prepared to apprehend the Jedi Master, but Masameda, who stumbled in on the incident, declined this. The ultimate yes-man himself understood the gravity of this change. Power would now fall into his hands, and he had the choice to uphold the status quo, or, of course, turn against the Jedi. In the moment, with someone as powerful as Windu having destroyed Sidious in front of him, Mas wasn't going to challenge that, though he might consider it as the Jedi were being removed from the executive building. Across the city, as Mace was lying about the would-be assassin and proving that the Jedi couldn't have possibly messed with the security footage, Anakin bowed before Shakti inside the council chambers. Sindralik and a couple of temple guards were deploying into the city to find the assassin. The future Grand Inquisitor was beyond upset, but he bought himself time. Shakti left her own meditation earlier because she was sensing the future of Order 66. When that came to a conclusion with Skywalker inside the executive offices, her meditation ended and she left her room and searched for Anakin inside the council chambers. Eventually, when he showed up, she learned the truth. She would be the one to honor Anakin Skywalker with the rank of Jedi Master and the access codes to the archives. He was eternally grateful for this kindness. With chaos unfolding across the city, Anakin was diving into the restricted section of the Jedi archives. He understood that what he needed was information. What he failed to understand is that knowledge on Force healing was inside the regular archives. It wasn't hidden, it just wasn't encouraged. Luminar Unduli had instructed Barriss Offee how to use Force Heal, and she had a number of times healed clones during the war. Skywalker seemed to neglect that here. Even though what Sidious promised wasn't tangible, Anakin rushed through the archives, searching for what was spoken about at the opera days before. He wasn't sure why information wasn't presenting itself, but he continued to hurry through it before he stopped himself. Qui-Gon's words, or whoever's words they were, hit him again. They weren't spoken aloud this time, but they were a reminder in his head. The words continued to cycle about. Your focus determines your reality became as repetitive as I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. These were chants used to find synchronicity with the Force. Now, Anakin had found the answer he needed the entire time. Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker. It sat with him for a moment. He was the youngest master in the Order since Mace Windu to join the Council. He needed to think like a master. His hands, which had been trembling with fear, were picked off the archive's data computer. He'd been searching through methods for hours. Outside the restricted section, the galaxy was transforming, and he was selfishly trapped inside of his mind. Anakin felt his flesh hand with his metallic one. The shaking slowly stopped, and he considered the reality, the gravity of everything he knew. Sidious was the Sith Lord. He was behind everything. The death of Dooku, the start of the war, the transformation of the galaxy. He was the architect of billions of lives lost. Now, what would one more be to him? If Anakin reasonably thought about the chicanery used to gain Palpatine more political leverage, then surely there was something a Sith Lord could do to gain more emotional control over an individual like Anakin. Just the night before, Palpatine tried to distance Padme and Anakin because of the delegation of 2000's differences with the Chancellor's policy. Sidious told Anakin that Padme was hiding something, but there was nothing. So in all of this, Anakin realized that his issue was not losing Padme, it was being corrupted by Palpatine, and those visions of her death realistically had come from Sidious. He said he knew about her certain death, as he called it. Palpatine was a part of those visions because he created them. Anakin took a deep breath and fell backwards. His back landed on a block of holocrons, and he heaved heavily for a moment. His focus had determined his reality. Within moments of this, Shakti entered the restricted section, looking for him again. He paused and she asked what was wrong, placing her hand under his shoulder and helping him up. The warmth exhibited by Qui Gon inside the executive offices could also be felt here. She was as empathetic as any Jedi, and when he tried to pretend nothing was wrong, she told him to be honest. There was nothing worth hiding. She was here to aid him, to guide him if he needed it. In broad strokes, he informed her about the visions of death, and how he had only just realized it was started by Palpatine. In this, Shakti told Anakin to go, get rest. The Order would handle the information she was going to present him with. Skywalker wouldn't learn it for a couple of days, but Grand Inquisitor assassinated Sindralik and the other 3 Temple guards sent to find the assassin. A controlled Executive Order 66 would also be used against Mace Windu. He did survive, but it resulted in the deaths of Mas Amedda, Commander Fox, and about 20 other clones. Master Windu did not intend to kill these clones, but he was left without a choice, and it had sent him into an almost spiraling depression. It hurt him immensely to kill those troopers because they were brothers in his eyes, but he did it to protect himself and the Jedi Order. It would be Mace who would testify before the belligerent and unsatisfied Senate. They were outraged, but there were too many valuable pieces of information that Windu had, that no one else could use against the Order. While Mace was fighting for the Jedi Order inside the Senate chambers, one of its key members was missing due to pregnancy. Padme would be with Anakin for the birth of Luke and Leia. Yet there was something odd for Anakin. There's just something off about his daughter. He couldn't piece it together, but he continued to be happy. He and Padme finally had the life they wanted. All that plotting and deception that she had lamented about a few days earlier was seemingly over. There, of course, were the Senate hearings and the brutal bureaucracy of the Republic, but of course, there was yet another issue for the bureaucrats. The Jedi, being Masters Mundi, Yoda, and Kenobi, were responsible for getting a peace treaty signed and over to the Republic Senate. They had ended the war. People were celebrating, and sure, Palpatine's death was a slight damper on the mood, but there was nothing less important than the end of the conflict. No matter how perfidious the Jedi seemed in the eyes of senators, they were pretty untouchable because they brought to fruition what everyone wanted, without Palpatine's oversight. Not to say that people were especially happy that the Chancellor died, but there was at the very least a connection made for many people, that the Jedi were able to end the conflict without Palpatine's administration stopping them. The surrender of the CIS was beneficial for the people of the Republic, and in all honesty, Palpatine promised a way and a way, and never delivered. The Jedi had, without even promising. Obviously speaking, this was coincidental and not planned out by the Order, but it absolutely worked in their favor. Even with his family doubling overnight, Skywalker did not abandon his responsibilities to the Jedi. He was with Master Windu when Ahsoka brought Maul back to Coruscant. The Sith assassin would be given his choices. Those would be to live or die, and the former Sith, having watched Palpatine's plans implode, chose the latter. He knew he would never escape the Mandalorian sarcophagus, and decided that his best choice of action was to accept his fate. The worst part is, the Jedi, thanks to learning of Maul's capture, had concocted an integration plan. Shakti and Kit Fisto created it, prior to Fisto's untimely death at Palpatine's hands. It involved giving Maul several lessons on the light and allowing him to choose the path himself. They believed it would best serve everyone if the Sith died through choice, not slaughter. The Bainite reign began following a battle. The Jedi were hopeful to not repeat history again. This, though, left one final challenger, Grand Inquisitor, the former Temple Guard. That wasn't of any concern at the moment. Ahsoka had initially planned to tell Anakin about the visions Maul shared with her, but it seemed she didn't need to because they stopped Sidious before he could do anything horrible. Luckily for Ahsoka, Anakin had seen Qui Gon, because if he hadn't, then surely she would be returning to a much different Coruscant. Her status as Jedi Knight was reinstated by Windu himself, and now the Masters of the Council would prepare to finish off their next foe, Grand Inquisitor. Anakin volunteered himself for this operation, and not a soul questioned his request. This brought him a lot of pride. He finally felt like one of them, and in all of this, he learned that patience was the greatest gift in the galaxy. Another reason he chose to volunteer for this was due to his interest in visiting Padme more frequently. If he didn't have to report to the Jedi Temple or Council meetings, then he could spend more time with his wife and children. Luckily, Representative Jar Jar Binks was overseeing Padme's Senate seat in the time of stagnation. Without Palpatine, the deregulated banks from earlier in the war could proposition a return to the 25% interest rates proposed prior to the extra 5 million clones purchased. This could also be increased to a different interest rate as well. Effectively, it could all crash the Republic market and give way for the Separatists to restart their rebellion. Master Plo Koon and the Wolf Pack were hunting down the Separatist Council, which, without Sidious, Tyrannus, Vader, or Grievous, were left to their own devices. Well, Newt Gunray opted for control, and some of the other members of their council weren't so fond of that. Mustafar became a battleground for more intransigent bickering. Luckily for the Republic, Plo Koon and Commander Wolf would intercept a long-range communication sent to the Pommand docking yards, the same location where the Malevolence was constructed. But there was already a problem for the CIS Council. Master Quinlan Voss had continued his campaign from Boss Pity and had led troops against the Separatists at the docking yards, ceasing their ability to respond to orders sent from Mustafar. Plo and the 104th would capture these bootless sycophants and put them where they belonged, in Republic jurisdiction. On Coruscant, Anakin's hunt for Grand Inquisitor continued to be unsuccessful. The former Temple Guard was hiding in the lower levels of the city. He had attempted to turn people against the Republic by utilizing local representatives on varying levels. But these politicians didn't see a problem with the Jedi. History was written by the victors, and without Palpatine to defend himself, there was nothing his supporters could rally around, even if they wanted to. Grand Inquisitor, as the last of the Sith, slaughtered those who held idealistic views on the Jedi, thus leaving behind a trail of blood for Anakin's team to follow. Master Skywalker moved from the lower levels to Padme's suite every night, and even though he was absolutely in love with his life, his children, and his partner, something still seemed off. He believed it had to do with the fact that Grand Inquisitor remained a threat, and there were still years of political work to undergo. The galaxy was still being reshaped by the peacemaking process, and he trusted, as Obi-Wan always instructed, to have patience. As they progressed further into the lower levels, Anakin started swapping clones out with Jedi. He feared losing Rex or Jesse. They had already lost too many men during the siege of Mandalore. Sterling and Vaughn were among those who perished. Anakin refused to lose anyone else, and soon he became very focused on his mission to find this hidden individual. Grand Inquisitor was a challenger, and those who traveled with Anakin understood the risks. This individual had killed 3 Temple Guards in Sindralic, thus making him a very great threat. But then it became silent. The last of the Sith became a shadow, parallel to what Ventress was before her own untimely demise. Anakin petitioned with the Council to send more Jedi to the lower levels, but they started to believe that they were looking in the wrong places. Grand Inquisitor had lived on Coruscant longer than Anakin. He knew his way around the city, and he would likely use that to his advantage. They collectively agreed that they should be concerned with the rise of the Sith again, but the former Temple Guard would reveal himself. He hadn't had the time as a Sith to understand their struggles, nor would he grasp the undertaking that Sidious held his entire life. Anakin actually understood and agreed with the statement posed by the Grand Master. Anakin ironically felt at home within the council chambers. He was respected and treated as one of their own, and no longer did he feel like an adolescent. Yet again, even with everything so perfect, something was awry. Though what Anakin noticed the most is that it was most present with his daughter. Luke and Leia were still infants. They were still growing more and more every day. But Leia's face just seemed unrecognizable. A bizarre occurrence, but even Padme suggested that Anakin might just be coming to grips with being a father. She understood his uneasiness because she was freaked out too. They were young parents in an unsanctioned relationship. It was a little heavy, but she promised that as the children grew, they would grow into themselves more, and their identities as individuals would become more understandable. In this, Padme alleviated all of Anakin's stresses, and from here on out, they would continue to blossom as a couple. The conflict was slowly put behind them, and from the ashes of the war rose new, minor conflicts. Though the most important to Anakin was Grand Inquisitor. Ahsoka began training a former youngling named Katuni. They were the perfect match for one another, and in this, another Jedi rose to the rank of Jedi Knight. Master Depa Billaba and the loss of Kit Fisto, Agan Kolar, and Saesee Tiin rejoined the ranks of the High Council. She also, as a result, suggested that her boy, Caleb Doom, start his trials to become a knight due to his successes on Kaller with the Bad Batch. He was 15, but it wasn't impossible. Like Master Vanestra Rowe before him, Caleb Doom would become one of the youngest Jedi Knights in Order history. Though, for the Council, most of their conflicts were minor. Crimson Dawn imploded after Maul was put down, and the criminal syndicates were fighting over former CIS resources. Clones were being sent to deal with these pirate enforcers. It was an extension of the Clone War, which kept the War Dogs happy and continued to pay off debts. This period was more of an unsanctioned conquest of non-Republic or non-combat zone territory. Planets under the Separatist Peace Treaty were considered non-approachable for Republic vessels. If there were hints of rebellion, then martial law would be enacted. It was in the peace treaties. It was a very difficult time for the galaxy, so clones taking over the Outer Rim territories helped alleviate some tension between Republic and Confederacy. As the weeks crept by, Anakin finally got his hint, and he dove in after it. Grand Inquisitor had stolen a ship from an off-duty deputy marshal, an individual who had a tracker on his own vessel because he was a deputy. The Pa'un fallen Jedi had never considered it, because he'd killed probably over 150 men and women since Palpatine's death. Because Skywalker got this lead directly, he abandoned Padme's residence to deal with it himself. He did inform the Jedi of his location, and they responded by dispatching Master Kenobi and a squad of knights, just in case. But everyone in the council trusted Master Skywalker. His personal starship sped through the city, and eventually landed outside the works. He had seemingly learned from Yaddle's mistake years beforehand. Anakin quickly shuffled out of his vessel and leapt into the hangar bay, before shoving his saber through the engine compartment of the Grand Inquisitor's stolen vehicle. The Jedi would pay off the Marshal's vessel so he could have it back eventually. Anakin's traditionally dark robes were a little lighter now, and he was very visible in the shadowy Sith lair. He walked around corridors and searched for his opponent, before spotting the Pa'un man standing at a Sith altar. Finally, Grand Inquisitor could be the life of a new Sith Order, a new sect born of his own will, and then he felt Anakin's presence. A chill ran down his spine. Their sabers ignited. A crimson staff faced off against Anakin's blue single blade. Without words to speak for each other, without needs to address why they were fighting, their blades collided. Quickly, all of Skywalker's talents displayed against Tyrannus in their final duel came to life. Grand Inquisitor was only powerful in deceit. He only won because he killed those who didn't know he was going to kill them, especially Sindralic. Anakin, though, stayed wary, not wanting to mess this up. One final chance to end the Sith. He bobbed away from strikes, moving more methodically than aggressively. He put the Grand Inquisitor right where he wanted him. The fallen Jedi was no match, and it became clear early into their engagement. Anakin busted through the saber staff, and his opponent used both blades as much as he could before one was cut out of his hand, and right as he swung in, Anakin spun his saber behind his back and knocked the last blade out of the Grand Inquisitor's hands. The Pa'un, using the little knowledge of the dark side he had, fired electricity from his hands. The burst of light was so bright it made Anakin's chest heave. That didn't make a lot of sense. Anakin blocked the electricity with ease and stood before Grand Inquisitor. The Pa'un's voice was very powerful and determined, and he spoke out. The light of electricity had vanished, and now, in silence, Grand Inquisitor transformed.
And now, young Skywalker, you will die.
Vader was standing behind his master. It was all a lie. His breath was shaken because he couldn't breathe. He couldn't see his daughter because he only had an idea of who she really was. Anakin inside the mask got dizzy and confused, and he didn't understand what was happening. His eyes were fixated on the back of his master's head, and then to his son who was on the ground and yelped in agony as electricity engulfed his body.
Anakin! Anakin! You are the only one in control. Anakin! Anakin Skywalker! Focus.
Electricity covered the Emperor's throne room, a beaming light that engulfed everything, and Vader stepped forward, pulling an object into his hand. The voices inside of his head continued to mount.
Anakin! Anakin! Anakin!
The Force is with you, Anakin.
Rise! We stand behind you, Anakin.
Vader realized everything he wanted, everything he could have been. He felt that warmth. He needed to give his son a chance to experience everything he should have had. Skywalker, not Vader, stepped towards his evil master and raised him off the ground, sparing Luke from the wrath of his evil master. The dark side came to its conclusion here. What Anakin imagined ended with the death of the Sith. What Anakin experienced here was the beginning of balance in the Force. Using the green lightsaber of his son in his hand, he shoved it through Palpatine's back as he continued to burn with electricity. Every last ounce of Sidious's strength was burning Anakin, killing him, robbing him of any last chance to experience peace. As Sidious was stabbed through the back, he wheezed in suffering until he was taken by death, and at the last moment, after his evil life was taken, he was thrown down the reactor shaft, and Vader collapsed. Luke was almost immediately by his side, and in Anakin's own mind, he returned to where he was before the Grand Inquisitor spoke to him. The end of the battle. It had ended just the same. The Sith were destroyed, but Anakin, a healed, unburdened by loss and desolation, was able to hold and hug Padme, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and his children for one last time. When he opened his eyes, he was under his son, lying on the ramp to a Lambda shuttle. Everything was spoken as if he had reenacted it 100 times and again. Luke had already saved him. Beyond Luke, he could see apparitions of Qui Gon Jinn, as well as Yoda and Ben Kenobi. They were here. They were protecting and watching over his son. Anakin found peace in that. And after looking upon his boy with his own eyes, for the first time in his life, he let go. Vader's body may have gone limp, but Anakin was helped up out of it by Masters Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. They smiled at him, and Qui-Gon put his hand on his transparent, glimmering shoulder, allowing Yoda and Obi-Wan to speak before speaking himself.
Made us proud, have you? Given your son a new future? Yes.
Balance has been restored, Anakin. You freed the galaxy, your son, and yourself.
Anakin's eyes looked from Yoda and Ben over to Qui-Gon, who smiled warmly.
Welcome home, Anakin.
And that, my friends, is our story. And special thanks to the patrons for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Special thanks to Concordia Jedi for being the Mel Blanc of this video. An absolute voice acting masterclass, as always. Go check him out. Link is down below. Let's talk about the story. Whoa. Okay. So I did it again. A little bit different this time. I really wanted Anakin's journey in this to feel a little bit different on a second watch through. There's a lot of hints that I kind of put there. The most obvious of them is the daughter one, that he doesn't recognize Leia. I think Vader had an idea of who Leia was and what she looked like, but that's why I wanted her to be, as Anakin saw her, kind of confusing and vague. Because he doesn't really know what she looks like, almost this constantly changing figure, because he only really interacts with Leia once, in the movies at least. But there are little specific pulls and tugs here where Anakin's experiencing certain things that he experiences after turning to the dark side, Like, the first master that Anakin interacts with after Order 66 starts, and Sinjalak is gone, is Shaak Ti. It's kind of like these weird little parallels that are existing throughout the story that are meant to kind of hint at what is coming, because this is what Vader remembers from that time a long time ago. He remembers how everything happened, but some of the things are misconstrued. And that's why for this what if, it's like he's reliving what it should have been, and what Vader's internalizing is that he should have chosen the path to best benefit his children. And he didn't do that, and that's why he makes the choice he does in the end. And it kind of just leads into this Return of the Jedi ending, and also this little special moment between Qui-Gon, Ben, and Yoda when Anakin becomes a Force Ghost as well, which I really wanted to capture in that moment. But anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed. Again, go check out Concordia Jedi. He's the GOAT, my dude. Literally Mel Blanc of this video. He literally did every single voice in this video. He is the GOAT. So go check him out. Go show him some love. Anyways, I love you all. Spread the love. And always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.